Welcome to the program of the Hearts of the Holy Family. I'm your host, Yves Jacques, and today we're going to be talking about the Great Warning and a deeper understanding of the Great Warning. And we have uh, Dr. Thomas Petrisko, who is the author of the book here, the Great Miracle of the Miracle of the Illumination of Conscience. And so part of this book, he goes into great detail on the illumination of conscience and what the deeper meaning to that. So thank you, Dr. Thomas, for being part of the show.
Well, good to be with you again, Yves.
Beautiful. So I know you have a lot to share. There's a lot of depth to this. You've studied this for the last 30 years or more. So you have a lot of experience. So let's get started.
Yeah, I thought we would perhaps start with a little review of our last show from a few weeks ago.
Yes.
For your viewers that weren't with us or maybe want to refresh what we discussed, that was the March 7th show, and it was titled A Miracle, the Warning and the Miracle. So I thought we would just do a little walkthrough of what we went over there essentially and try to bring your viewers up to date on what was already discussed so that we don't sound like that we've skipped over the essence of the illumination and have gone into this deeper understanding.
Yes, I agree. I think that's a very wise thing because we could do a little synopsis of what we talked about in depth the last time.
Right. So last time we began, if you recall, on the word conscience. So we wanted to establish within our audience's mind the reason why this is called the miracle, the illumination of all consciences. And the best place to start is with the word conscience. So if you recall, we talked about the conscience having three basic stages of development. The first stage being, for lack of a better word, kind of an innate, built-in structure, foundation of conscience that God gives us just as being made in his image. This allows us basically, even if we have no religious formation at all, to kind of have an instinctive understanding of the part of us that is our conscience, that it's working, that it's active, and it's there for a reason. And it was nothing that we did to have it. It was built into us. The second part of the conscience development is what we experience in life. As we go through life, we make mistakes. We do things that are proper. We sometimes learn the hard way. Sometimes we learn through sometimes hurting ourselves or hurting others by accident. And all these things go into what helps to further develop the conscience from the innate level. So that is the second part. And the third part was what we are taught. We went to catechism. We went to church on Sunday. We had teaching in school from professors to priests to authoritarian figures, most of all our mother and our father. And these three things together come and form our conscience and, begin what would be the groundwork of understanding this miracle.
Yes.
Now, the second thing that we discussed last time was the word judgment. And this is the illumination of all conscience. And it basically has always historically been understood as being kind of a mini judgment in which people are going to, for lack of a better word, but a most appropriate word, go through kind of what was going to be a judgment at the end of our life and at the end of time. So last time we discussed that there is what we call in Catholic theology the particular judgment. And that's when the moment we die, the moment we leave our body, we are basically listening to our own rewind of what we just went through in this whole life. God's going to play a role, a stream of thought for us that we're going to hear and be able to measure and understand why we're being judged, what occurred at each time we made a choice, how much God was with us in making that choice, how much the devil was tempting us or trying to steer us away from God, how much our guardian angel was speaking to us, or Mary, or even we don't know for sure what is involved totally, but all those particulars that make up the particular judgment, that is in essence what we are talking about when we talk about the judgment, okay? Then the second part of the judgment after the particular judgment is the general judgment. And last time we talked about how that is going to occur at the end of the world. Everybody's going to be there. We're all going to see how we went through history, what role we played in history, the effects that we had in history. Now, people maybe thinking that I'm talking about, history as we understand in books, but history is very, very complicated. It involves small little things that were not measurable or known that actually contributed to something that became a development years later or decades later or whatever. So at the general judgment, our particular judgment will be inclusive in the general judgment because all of us, one way or another, play a role in mankind moving forward, in humanity going through time and leading to what will be at the general judgment, the end of the world.
Well said. That's a very good synopsis of what we talked about, and now we're going into this particular event, this special event.
Yes. So we talked about the illumination of conscience and what that means. What is the basis? What is the essence of that miracle? Last time you and I discussed 20 different points of that miracle, and we're obviously not going to review all 20 points again. But in summary, what those 20 points were covering was the fact that the world, at a brief instance, simultaneously is all going to experience something that has a divine element to it and a human element to it. And it's supposed to be correlated with some event in the sky. We're not sure what that was. Last time we talked a little more adventurous about what that might be. Historically, there's been in old Catholic prophecies the talk about an asteroid or a comet or some type of cosmic event that draws the attention of the world. I think last time I was talking about the fact that it may be something that actually comes from the hands of men or is leading up to something from the hands of men that may have us all, simultaneously at that moment where God intervenes and brings off this incredible, extraordinary prophesied miracle. So what that's going to be, we don't know, but we know what it's supposed to accomplish. And it's supposed to accomplish is we're all going to see ourselves and the state of our souls as God sees us at that moment. Now, for some of us, it may be quite frightening. In fact, we talked last time about the fact that it has been skepticized and speculated that maybe some will even die from what they experience. But, if we just kind of looked at it from a standpoint of a broad spectrum, everybody's going to, go through this illumination and experience it differently based upon where their soul is. And obviously, it sounds from all the prophecies that our emotions are going to be part of this. So we're going to be very, very emotionally affected by this event. And we're going to see ourselves, and we're going to, one of the things we talked about last time that was a prominent number of those 20 points was that many people, especially Catholics, obviously, are going to run off to confession. Now, that doesn't, eliminate the fact that people of other faiths may feel some compelling need to get clean with God themselves without the sacramental part of what Catholics experience in the confessional. So we know that this is going to be powerful. We know that it's going to be life-changing. We know that it's going to be world-changing. We probably know, in essence, though, very little of what it really is going to encompass. And that's what we're going to talk about today.
Yeah, so a lot of these, the deeper understanding is based on some of the revelations that we had talked about as well. But we're going to go more in depth on this.
Yeah, I think you have the book there, and I think there's 40 of them all together. But
yes.
A little background about what we're talking about to set the stage, and then you'll lead me through each one, and we'll discuss these.
Sure.
I think that for the most part, this tremendous, extraordinary event that's been prophesied to occur and affect every human being in the world, what we've done in our previous discussion with this, and what most of the books have done, The wonderful book by Marian Flynn on this topic. Christine Watkins did a wonderful book on this. For the most part, those books categorically are looking at what people in history have claimed to have already experienced that sounds like the warning.
Mm-hmm.
And what the theologians and what the priests who have written books on this subject have basically kind of assumed through discernment what they feel is going to happen. But to conceptualize all this, that whole area that we discussed previously and that they discussed in their books primarily deals with what we would kind of call a spiritual side of this. Okay, what is going to happen to human beings from the standpoint of what is recognizably a spiritual event in their life. So they're going to be confronted with their sin. They're going to be confronted with how they feel about their sin, how God shows them their sin has offended him, and how this all together is calling them to change, and most of all, to return to God, to come back to God. So that's the spiritual side of this. But what we're going to discuss today is the fact that this event is going to be so powerful, so broad and sweeping that it's going to affect other parts of our lives. We're going to view things that are occurring in our lives, in the world, in a different way, not just the spiritual dimension of what's occurring with us, but we're going to look at things and say, do I think the same way as I did before this event now that I'm looking at this? For example, let's say people that are looking at pornography, for example, they all of a sudden are going to be awakened to the fact that this is a great evil, that this is something that's just blatantly wrong, that it's very offensive to God, but it's very, disturbing and destructive to their own soul. They're going to, for example, maybe look at abortion, and they're going to all of a sudden be awakened to the fact that they see that every human being that is conceived is made in the image of the Creator, and therefore has a right to be born, and that there is really not an element of choice involved here. And they're going to now understand this human event from the standpoint that they were incorrectly looking at it. So just as a little summary right there with those two examples, we can see that there is what you and I are talking about as far as the title to this talk today, a deeper understanding of the warning. And by the way, you and I were discussing the history of the warning and how it got that name. I don't think most people know that Mary never came in at Garabandal and said, this event I call the warning. She actually, in essence, said what was going to happen. And she said in so many words that it was going to be like a warning. And then 30 years later, John Haffert and a priest named Father Beebe got together, and they decided they were going to do a little booklet on this subject. And they were trying to come up with a name for it. And then they were reading about what Mary said at Garabandal. And then John Haffert said to Father Beebe, why don't we call it the warning? And so henceforth, we have the warning. So for those people who don't, really understand the inception of that title, that's where it came from.
That's very interesting. Very interesting. And from what I understand, it was a great event that they were talking about.
Yeah, well, John Haffert, who was a good friend of mine, would go on to write a book titled "The Great Event," which once again is the warning, another synonym for it, along with probably a dozen synonyms altogether that I'm sure your viewers are probably very aware of.
Yeah, well, I find it very interesting because Our Lady of the Great Event, Our Lady of Good Success, in Spanish, it's Our Lady of the Good Event. So it could actually be translated with the terms that we're using right now, Our Lady of the Warning, Our Lady of this great event, which probably makes a lot of sense because this warning is going to be life-changing.
Yeah, that's a good point you make, because Mary is obviously talked about this in many of her apparitions. I know Pachi in Ecuador, Father Gobi, Christina Gallagher, and that's not to get into judging what the church's judgment on each one of these are. We leave that to the church, but I'm just talking about what has been recorded from a reporting standpoint of what occurred there, and whether or not it is valid or true or was a copycat. Only God knows, and these alleged or so-called visionaries and mystics know for sure. But speaking about what has been recorded from each one of them, there's a wealth of different language that's been used to describe this event, and probably very much so from what they heard from Mary.
Beautiful, beautiful. So maybe we could get started and read some of the deeper understanding chapter, and then we could go line by line or paragraph by paragraph.
Yeah, the deeper understanding is, as we did with the last show, we talked about the 20 major points of the warning. These are 40 major points that involve a deeper understanding of the warning. And each one is differently, and it causes us to basically look at this from the standpoint beyond the spiritual standpoint, which is what I discussed.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let's get started. It's on page 119 of your book, The Miracle of the Illumination of Conscience. And this is the first paragraph. The miracle of conscience is being given to the world because the reason Christ was sent by the Father has been, for the most part, forgotten. Therefore, the illumination will begin in a dramatic fashion, the almost instantaneous realization that God exists.
Yeah, isn't that an extraordinary point? Because if we're going to talk about this tremendous miracle, this great event, why was it given? And at the core of this, and as you had mentioned in your preliminary introduction of me, I had spent probably years and years and years of looking at all of not just what the visionaries were told, but the commentary surrounding that, and then through a lot of prayer, and especially a book that I want to recommend to your listeners here, your viewers, called "Seeing with the Eyes of the Soul." It's published by St. Andrew's Publications, and it involves a insight into a lot of these things that we're going to cover today. But when we look at this first point, that it revolving around why the warning is going to happen in the first place, it's basically such an obvious thing, but something we would be surprised to even think about. And that is, many people don't believe in God today. And I think the most perfect example of that is when you look at the apparitions at Medjugorje. If you see what was said on the second day, Mary says, "I've come to tell you God exists."
Yes.
Think about that. Fundamentally, here she comes with all this knowledge of the faith and all this knowledge of humanity, and she begins with telling us that I've come to tell you God exists. So the question becomes, why does she have to say that? When I first read that, Eve, I thought, well, she was speaking to the communist people there that were under communism in what was the former Yugoslavia at the time. And that was why she made that point. But in actuality, as I, started to look at this closer, and as she went on to explain even more in the course of her visitations there and throughout the world, it becomes clear. We as God's people don't even realize anymore that we're God's people. And Mary goes on to explain to a lot of visionaries throughout the world that there's really, two different types of atheism. There's theoretical atheism and there's practical atheism. So theoretical atheism is very basic. It's very blunt. It's basic in what it obviously means. That is, a denial of the existence of God. And, we can get into a lot of different sub-terminology on that, but I don't think that's necessary. It's basically someone who doesn't believe that God exists at all and is content with that understanding. But practical atheism is what Mary was really talking about, because she also is explaining to us at these apparition sites and at these different places where she encounters mystics and visionaries, she's explaining to us that if we really do believe that God exists, we would live lives that reflect that. And so practical atheism is, in a way, and Mary goes on to say to different visionaries that in some ways, the atheism that existed in communist nations, the atheism that exists in China and in the Soviet Union at the time, in Eastern Europe, was not as bad an atheism as existed in the West, because for the most part, the West was so engulfed in practical atheism that while it would say in a survey, do you believe in God? Yes, I do. Does anything in your life reflect that? And what Mary's saying is it doesn't.
Yeah, that's amazing. Yeah, so that's a very good point. I know that Our Lady, and that's one of the things that always comes to me, Dr. Thomas, is the the issue of people living as, and they don't know. Like you were given Catholic education. I was as well, and then I learned it at home. But most of the kids today, they're taught nothing. So it would, out of mercy for these people, they would need to be instructed, right? And I think that's probably why our Lord is looking to this, to save us. Other than that, we're lost.
Yeah, and in looking at this point from the opposite of the idea of practical atheism being on a very human level, I've thought about it on an extreme theological level, where I've listened to priests in the Catholic Church and bishops and different authoritarian figures in there who speak of there not being a hell, or there not being a devil, or there not being a Satan. And then you're asked to look at that statement and understand what the ramifications of that are. And the ramifications are, then what do we need redemption from? Because Christ came to save us. He came to redeem us of our sins. Our sins are going to send us to hell. But if there is no hell, and there is no devil, and there is no temptation, there is no Satan, then the whole purpose of the faith is kind of null and void at its primary essence. So both extremes can be looked at as far as what the illumination of all conscience is going to touch on, because we're going to be called to understand that God exists, and that's going to be a broad range of a final conclusion in each individual's mind.
Beautiful. So let's continue with number 2. The ungodly culture of our time has caused many innocent victims great suffering. Innocent and vulnerable, these are God's children, and He wishes to end their suffering and to bring them home to their rightful inheritance now.
Yeah, isn't that just think about the many different dimensions of what we can imply from that. First of all, I know you have, and I certainly have. I've looked at when you watch the news and you see people that are born into very terrible circumstances. Sometimes they're born with mothers and fathers that were drug addicts. Sometimes they're born in places where there's nothing but violence right outside their front door. They can't go down to the end of the street without being afraid they're going to be shot. All the different areas of where we look at people who are by no fault of their own. I often think about people that grow up in tribes in jungles that really have maybe a pagan understanding of a god, but have no understanding of what we understand to be the true God, and how to develop that. And so we look at all these different levels of injustice of different people that were born into circumstances they couldn't help. And so when we look at that and we see how tragic that is and how sad that is and how sorry that is, and we're now asked to, through the illumination of conscience, to understand that while we were suffering, watching that and seeing that and feeling bad and sorry for these people, God himself is looking at that and he understands their innocence too. There was a visionary many years ago, and I'm not going to say her name, but she received a whole series of revelations over a period of years called crucified innocence. Okay. And one of the things that she claimed to have been shown was little babies on the cross, and they were crucified. And it was a terrible sight. And she was just, aghast and suffering and angst by seeing that. And she asked the Lord about it. And the Lord explained to her that there are just so many people born into circumstances in which their suffering is so great, and they had nothing to do with the circumstances that caused their suffering. So we have to realize that God sees that. God sees their innocence. He sees how they couldn't help where they were born, and they couldn't help what was happening to them. They couldn't help what they were taught. Sometimes they were taught very, very, for lack of a better word, evil things in order to survive. And so God wants to free them from this bondage in which they were, from birth prisoners of unjustness that they see, and God sees they need to be finally freed from. And supposedly this miracle is going to touch on all these people that in a way, like this visionary said, was crucified innocence.
Yes, I look at it as a great event of mercy for these people.
Yes.
I always say to my children, and and I often say it to myself, if I was given the same set of instructions that a lot of these young people are today, I wouldn't do any better than them. I might be doing worse than them. So, I mean, this compassion that we ought to have for our neighbor, and to pray to God that this great event, this warning, happens soon in order to save as many souls as possible.
Yes, and besides the salvation part of it, just to have their life be readjusted, and they hopefully from this event are taken down a path of peace, because perhaps they've never had any peace in their life.
True. Yeah, and so many people that I've met that have had the conversions, and some of the stories are pretty terrible. They've had really a bad, horrific life, and through the grace of God, they were able to come to the truth. And I think so. Again, this illumination of conscience, this warning experience, will be a great act of mercy for the world.
Yeah, it'll be a liberation, and once again, we can see how this is a deeper understanding, because most of the time when we talk about this miracle, we're talking about the moment of the miracle being the essence of the miracle, and the greatness of this miracle is not the miracle itself. It's going to be the after effects.
Yes,
transform the world.
I believe with all my heart that it's going to be a new era. Many have mentioned the new era, or a new Pentecost, where this enlightenment, the people will be able to see themselves as God sees them, and so there will be a great opportunity for them to convert instantaneously. I know some people that have received the illumination of conscience, in my comings and goings, and I mean, when it comes to their conversion, they're brought to tears for the sorrow that they have for their sins.
Yes.
So
Yeah. I think I know when I go to confession, sometimes when I come out, I'm in tears just from the mercy and the grace of the confession. And I look around the church sometimes, and I see other people feel the same way just from that moment of. So just think of how many people have never had the opportunity to shed their sins and to have that relief of walking out of the confessional and saying, it's over, it's done. God's forgotten it. It's in the past.
Beautiful. So let's continue. Number 3, Satan's ferocity and evil are at an all-time intensity, and this is causing the downfall of many souls. Souls not designed for the culture of Satan and who are living outside of the will of God, but Jesus is near them. They are not forgotten. And through the transformation, the miracle will bring, their lives will be lifted up and brought back home to the Father. This will occur because of God's great love for his people.
Yeah, boy, isn't that a profound, profound thought? Because I've often thought, when I walk around, let's say a mall or an airport where you're looking at lots of people, and you see the culture today, and you see the different things that reflect in the culture, especially fashion and listening to people talk, and just everything that our eyes and ears pick up. And when I think about that, I think about how we're living in an age of demonic reign on our senses that's incomparable. I mean, I often think about what it would have been like for the apostles, for example, to come back and to be walking around the streets of our cities today and to see the sights that are able to be seen, to see all the things that are just considered as normal today, or to watch a television show and to watch the blatant sexuality in it, and to watch and listen to the language that's used, the disrespect, all of what makes up our society and culture today is, according to what Mary has been telling us, is part of a 100-year or century reign of Satan. And from what we understand from Pope Leo XIII's vision, in which he was given reportedly a look at the future, in which the devil would be given all this intense power, all this ability to create havoc in people's souls, and how much of a consequence that would create. It's extraordinary to think that we're going through that. That you may look back in history to, say, the time of Lincoln, and then go back to the time of George Washington, or the time of the Middle Ages, or all the way back to the Roman times. And certainly they had their trials and tribulations, but they never had an attack on the senses that we have had. Okay,
True.
We can't go through a day where we don't look at something that's on television, or something that's on our phone, or something that no generation before us has ever experienced. Okay, all the way up to the people that are hooked by the devil on this and get into pornography. So we have to understand that the devil has been given all this power for a reason. And one of the things that he was not told at that time was that Mary would be sent at this time to bring about the triumph, to bring about his downfall, to end this tyranny of sin that is going on in the world today. And I think that in retrospect, in the future, they'll look back and say, what was it like living at that time and going through that temptation? Okay. And I'm sure there'll be great saintly souls at that time who will say, I wish I was up to the challenge of what was given at those souls at the time, and to see if I was worthy of beating it down, of defeating it. Well, often in my own prayer life, I thank the Lord for being so generous and so full of grace in my life to help me and to be with me in times of weakness, in times of the devil trying to tempt me. And so looking back in the future, I think they're going to say, what was it like to be going through a time like that, in which the so much media was in play, and how they were in constant exposure to all that temptation.
Yeah, again, one of the things that comes to me too um, is brought back to home to the Father. This is something that's very dear to me, because that's part of my I would say my encounter with the Eternal Father. Because as a Catholic, you learn your catechism, but this loving encounter with God the Father is something that is an experience to have. And I know that there are mystics. I know that Eileen George talks about a daddy God, and Abba, Father. And to me, this closeness is something that once the people experience that, they're going to want to be in heaven, and they're going to work for heaven from that point on. And so that's very promising, that God is, through this revelation, he's going to show how much he loves us, and he loves everyone, and he wants everyone to go to heaven, without exception. So I think that's is something really to look forward to. And it's hopefully, like I say, I pray that it comes soon, because it'll bring a lot of hope to people that are living in despair today.
Yeah, I've written 4, 5, I think 6 books on the Father, and I think the book that is the most important one as far as the message is the burning need for this world to have a feast day in the Catholic Church celebrating the Father, and hopefully that is going to occur in the near future. It's one of the things that I'm working on with people. It's one of the things that I was working with some of the great theologians that God brought into my life that were working on also with us to try to bring a day in the church once a year in which we celebrate the fatherhood of God.
Yes, I believe that was Mother Eugenia, right? That was one of the messages that was given by God the Father to her, right? A special
Yeah,
feast.
Mother Eugenia Ravazia, yeah, and Renee Larnton, when he used to come to my home every summer, he was telling me what he discovered with his investigation of that, and it's really extraordinary. It's something we probably should save for another show because it has so many different aspects to it that are surprisingly sorrowful, but at the same time, hopefully filled with the future of where humanity is headed in returning to the arms of the Father, as we read in the Catechism of the Church.
Yes, yes. One of the things that comes to me when I think of how much God loves me, that the Father loves me, and it brings me to tears, and it also brings me this healthy fear of the Lord. And people misunderstand the fear of the Lord. It really is not fearing him as a God of vengeance, but being not wanting to to offend your best friend, not wanting to offend your creator. And that's the fear of the Lord that gives wisdom, right? So
That's
so
such a
let's continue.
yeah.
We'll kind of dovetail it with the next one, because I think it kind of dovetails. If I once I reading this, the time has come for God's great victory. Long promised, mankind must be transformed, and part of the answer to millions of prayers over the centuries is the miracle of transformation. It will be a special way, a triumph of the rosary. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah, and boy, that's such an easy one to understand that the illumination of all consciences will push down the road farther because uh, many a Catholic has pondered the meanings of the Our Father prayer, thy kingdom come, thy kingdom
Mhm.
come, thy kingdom come. Well, thy will be done. Well, we know once that Christ set foot on this earth, it was the beginning of the coming of the kingdom. But there is a deeper, richer essence to this part of the Our Father prayer, I actually did a book on this, and some of the great theologians in history have also written about it. And it certainly shows that not only do people today wonder when is this kingdom going to be more manifest, more visible, but it's been something that's been on people's minds for centuries. The coming of the kingdom on earth as it is in heaven. This is foretold to be an age of the Father. Sometimes we talk about, as you said before, the second Pentecost. That quite often is looked at is synonymously with other language, such as the divine era, the divine will, and the reign of Christ's kingdom on earth, and just all these synonymous terms, all kind of coming to the same conclusion, and that is that the Father is going to be much more known, much more understood, and much more loved in the future. One of the things that some of the other mystics that have had revelations about a feast day of the Father have talked about the understanding that the Father's feast day, they've been told, must not just arise from the hierarchy of the church taking it upon themselves to add another date to the calendar. What they say they've been told is the Father has said to them that he wants the people, his people, from their hearts to cry out, Abba, Father, and for that to be kind of a ball of snow at the top of the mountain that starts small and this grows and grows and gets larger and picks up speed. And by the time it gets to the bottom of the mountain, everybody's there waiting for it, because they are not just depending or relying or hoping for, the hierarchy of the church to declare this feast day, but they're telling them, we must have this feast day. We must have this feast celebrating the fatherhood of God.
Beautiful, beautiful. And I know that again, it says here that the triumph of the rosary, which again, it's millions of people praying for this event to come. And I think people that are praying the rosary, they should actually be praying for this event to come out of mercy for the people around them. And so again, it's the triumph of Mary, because the triumph of the rosary, it's the victory of God. It's the victory of the Trinity. Our Lady, she's the mother. She's the mother of the Trinity, the mother of the Savior, but also the Our Lady of the Trinity, right? She's the daughter of the Father, the spouse of the Holy Spirit, and the mother of the Son, right? So
Yeah,
beautiful.
the prayer of the rosary historically, reportedly, was given to Saint Dominic. And one of the things that Our Lady said in an apparition to him afterwards, that someday I will save the world through the rosary. And
Yes.
it's not a stretch right now to think that we're living in that someday. And
Yes.
it certainly causes us then to see that Mary's rosary will not only lead to the era of peace, but the era of peace will encompass this feast of the Father.
Beautiful, beautiful. So let's continue. We're on number 5. So we still have a little ways to go. We'll have to keep some for another episode, Dr. Thomas. The great transformation that will occur from the illumination will be unlike any religious transformation before, for it will come totally from within, not without. Indeed, it will come from deep within hearts, which will be ready after living through so much dysfunction in a decadence of our culture, and after so much preparation by Mary, our mother. To a degree, God has always come from within, but he will now, in even greater way, through the illumination. All this can be seen as a medicine, a cure showered upon the earth. The earth, in a dense virus like fog, and now will come the cure. But like many cures, it will be uncomfortable and painful for some. Such will be the moment of truth for these souls.
Yes, that is, you could actually break that number 5 up into three different ones. There's so much there. But let's focus on the beginning of it. What you said, that the great transformation that will occur from the illumination will be unlike any religious transformation before, for it will come totally from within, not without. Indeed, it will come from deep within the heart. So right there, think about the essence of how profound that is. We know about, and especially to our Protestant brothers who often speak of great revivals, as you're familiar with. And we know through the history of the church where there have been, peaks and valleys in the history of the Catholic Church. We understand that these great movements are very visible from the standpoint of seeing the human activities and the human leaders and the energy that was put into this. But the spark that's going to light this transformation, which is going to be global, and is going to affect people of all religions as they start to come together towards the one single truth, which is where this is all headed. It's going to come from within. So each person who experiences illumination is going to go through a extraordinary, if they're open, extraordinary conversion to a massive amount of grace. Like, there's one thing to wake up in the morning and splash your face with some cold water. There's another thing to have somebody come up from behind you, like at an NFL football game at the end of the game, and thrown a bucket of Gatorade over you, right? I mean, one is a splash of water that's, you're prepared for. It still feels good. You decided to do it. The other is a surprise, but it's still a joyful experience because you've obviously just won some type of championship. Either way, what I'm saying is that's the alternative of what's going to happen with the illumination of all consciences. People are going to be like dumped with a bucket of water over their head as far as the reality of God, the reality of their soul, the reality of goodness, the reality of truth, the reality of hope, the reality of what this world was designed to be in the first place. When you look at the abysmal dysfunction of what the world is going through right now, if you took everybody in the world right now and went through what their day was like and asked them what they did, and then if we were able somehow to see what God had actually been planning for each human being on that day and what the world was supposed to be doing on that day as a whole, I think we would be shocked, because we're completely not just off the path, but we're going backwards. We're going in an opposite direction of what God has planned for this world. So once we go through the illumination, we're going to be enlightened as far as what the real purpose of mankind on this planet is, what the real purpose of the transformation is all about, and what the real purpose of the future of humanity is about. This world is going to go in a powerful way forward, in a way that's unimaginable, and it's going to be totally focused upon this desire for more divine, more divine, more divine. We're going to be so hungry to have the divine in our lives. And then what's going to happen is the fact that God's going to work with us in all these projects, all these things that we want. We want a cure for cancer. We want a cure for this, a cure for that. These solutions are so much more available when God is the guy sitting next to us as a partner in finding the answer to what we think we want, and, the great mysteries that are going to be unfolded at this time. So this change in the world is going to come from hearts, and it's going to be from billions of hearts all being changed at the same time. That's going to redirect the focus of what the purpose of this planet is instantaneously.
Very well said. I think one of the things that comes to me also is the heart. Like it's going to be deep within our hearts, and I think of the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary, and also now the devotion to the Chaste Heart of Saint Joseph. The Lord is preparing our hearts with their hearts, right? So now we see the heart of Jesus. This is a fairly new devotion when you think it's in the 1600s. And, there was 1600 years without the devotion to the Sacred Heart. The Immaculate Heart of Mary, again, it's during Fatima, which became much more popularized, the reparation for the Immaculate Heart of Mary. So again, this deep conversion of heart, going deep into our hearts, seems to me that there's a connection there.
Yeah, and this connection is something that I think God has been preparing, setting the stage with these devotions to the Immaculate Heart, devotions to the Sacred Heart, devotions to the Heart of Jesus, and also devotion to the Divine Paternal Heart of God our Father. The heart, in essence, is always been understood by humans very easily as a symbol of love. We say people are hard-hearted. We say all these different, sayings that we have describing the heart. So it's not surprising then that God has chosen to have us come to understand what he's all about through the same symbol, the heart. So we look at Mary's heart, we look at Jesus's heart, we look at Joseph's heart, we look at the Father's heart, and we understand one thing from all that: love. Love is the essence of what's coming, and love will be the essence of the illumination of all consciences.
Beautiful, beautiful. So we'll have a time maybe for a few more, and then we'll have to keep some for another time, I think.
We have 40 of these or 50 of these all together, so we probably will be able to do several shows on this.
Yes, I think it's worth it, because there's a lot of layers here that need to be discussed. In a mystical way, after the miracle, all that is present will become new. All will be transformed by God. Those who are in confusion need not be afraid. For come the impact of the illumination, all that is of God will be drawn to him from the disarray.
Yes, this is once again, we talk about the deeper understanding of the illumination. So we understand right and wrong, so we understand black and white, but what this point is trying to point out is there's this gray area in life, and we could say a gray area always is an area filled with some confusion. There isn't, a definitive understanding that it's wrong, or if it's the definitive understanding that it's good, that it's right, that it's bad. So what's going to happen from the illumination is a lot of the gray areas in life, a lot of the misunderstandings are going to become clear. I think that's going to be really, really valuable, in the sense that the world is going to then start, from the standpoint of nations, coming together for a mutual goal, which will be peace. We're going to be able to see what has been blocking peace with this nation, or with this people, or with our neighbor. We're going to be able to see their side. They're going to be able to see our side. And then we're going to be able to all see God's side. And we're going to be able to come together in this great, halo of truth that'll be around us, above us. And it's going to bring us to such a wonderful stage in the world, in which, the essence of the world will not be based upon conflict, but the essence of the world will be based upon agreement.
That's well said. Well said. And so we won't be in disarray. That'll be fixed. So let's continue. Each person's heart who comes back to God will be like a temple purified. For God desires change, and this will be his call for his children's attention. The illumination will be his clapping hands, causing alarm and surprise, so that all will stop and listen. There will be no other invitation after this. The chosen ones tell us it is the rhapsody to be played out, with prayer calling the love of children to the love of their Father. God's voice will bellow through the clouds. Mankind's ears will cock and listen. Looking to the heavens in attention, God desires none of his children at this time to be lost. He wants his voice through the illumination to be heard.
Yeah. So what this deeper understanding is such a point of joy in realizing that the event itself, the illumination, is only going to be the beginning of this new relationship with God. He's not going to say, well, here's the illumination of all conscience. Let's see how you do. Let's see if you get it, if you respond in a proper way. That isn't going to happen. He's going to be like the coach who brings in a player and not only drafts them or brings them in because they're good, but then starts to teach them how to become better, how to work with them, how to bring all their potential out, how to show them that they can achieve, they can do. So God's going to be now, after the illumination, our partner. And he wants us to know that from that moment on, through prayer, through our understanding that he exists, because you have to remember that the essence of the illumination is we're going to know, first and foremost, more than anything else, that God exists. But we're not just going to know that in a sense that, well, I think God exists. We're going to know that in a sense of confidence all day long individually. Each one of us will close our bedroom door and get on our knees as Christ tells us in Scripture to talk to our Father, but we're going to be on our knees realizing that he's hearing us. We're going to have a mental image that our Father is right there in the room with us, listening to us. And now picture a whole planet now that understands that God is real, that he's with us, that he's listening to us, that now when that bedroom door opens back up and we go out and start to live our life, he's coming out that door with us. He's going to be part of our day. He's going to be part of our plans, part of our projects, part of our ideas. What this point is trying to say is the illumination never goes away. It's permanent as far as the residue of it. And it's permanent from our standpoint because we experienced it, but it's also permanent from God's standpoint because he decided to give it to us, and then he's going to be true to the essence of what he's trying to achieve through it.
Yeah, and it really makes me think of this new era, that Our Lady and our Lord has given to Luisa Picaretta, the era of the divine will, because all of this, it really is pointing that we're going to be so much into God that thy will be done, and it's something that we've never experienced. And I know that many of the people that follow the divine will devotion, that's what this is what brings them forward, is that it's something that has never been experienced ever, and that we will. I think the warning is probably what's going to precipitate that.
Oh, absolutely. The warning is kind of like the stones in the pond in which you try to get to where you're trying to go. It's going to be what leads us into what Picaretta has tried to, and other mystics have tried to explain, is that there's a great age of God coming, and that age is going to be something in which I don't think people today can even begin to conceptualize.
Yeah, and one of the things and it's something that comes to me as well, and maybe I've heard it elsewhere, but I say it is that our children and our grandchildren, they are really the children of the triumph, because this is really going to be the triumph of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Like she, at the end, my Immaculate Heart will triumph. If there's this infusion of love and our conscience are illumined, our hearts are going to be moved, right? And so there'll be a triumph of Mary's heart because our hearts are going to be wanting to be in union with her heart, right?
Yeah, that's a really good point. The children are going to be what carries this forward, and they're going to be, the true testimonies that this event was real, and that whoever tries to deny that it was some type of event that was explainable, the change in each person's lives, the children of the illumination will make sure that will be refuted easily.
Yeah, and there are some revelations that talk about the children of the light, the torch bearers of the Queen, they're going to be so in love with Our Lady that they're going to be shining the light around them, and it'll be the new era, like this great event. I love the idea of the warning. Sounds like, okay, be careful, be cautious. There's a warning, but the event, this great event, it sounds so sublime.
Yeah, it's the perfect terminology for it.
Yes. So let's continue. There's another one here, number 8. It is God's strength, not man, that will make the difficult road for some easier. Coming back to God now in our times of materialism, sexuality, and paganism will not be an easy road to haul for many. But God's strength will permit the transformation of many hearts to take place. He will be with us, healing his children, providing for their needs. He is the Lord, our God, and he will feel his. We will feel his presence, and he will pass through us and be in us, as our hearts will communicate the rhythm and the harmony of his desired will. And for those not strong enough, he will wipe away all tears, taking souls unto himself and then keeping them out of harm's way. Beautiful.
Yeah, I think that point is a deeper understanding of how God is going to be with those who are most afflicted right now, most troubled, most suffering, and how he's going to be able to be relied upon after the illumination to be really close to those that can depend upon him to be the source of what they've just encountered. These people are living in a life that's very painful to them for either reasons of their own choosing, or, as we said before, by no choosing of their own, as far as how they got started down that path. But now with the illumination, they're going to realize, they're going to know, they're going to understand that they have truly a father, and a father in every sense of the word. The mystery of the divine paternal heart of the Father is the essence of understanding that this love, this incredible divine love, will be there as a crutch, as a support, as a wheelchair, as a sign of what we need and can depend upon to get us through. And these people that are suffering the most, they're going to know that this will help. This will be the answer that they have been led to understand is there, and that they don't have to worry about, they have to make the effort to go to work for it or get it or do it. God is going to be with them, and he's going to understand that he's going to carry upon himself the hard part of making the success of the illumination visible in their life.
Yeah, and I do know some people that are they're new into the faith, that they lived like pagans, and they lived in the occult as well, and through the grace of God, through the gentleness of God, they were given a light, and no, they have not received the illumination of conscience in what we're talking about, this great event, but God gives these mini illumination of conscience to certain, in order to get them out of their misery, their paganism. So I think that's it's beautiful to know that God is accompanying them in this.
It's really hard for us to probably even understand what they're going to need, because we're going to be looking at it from a standpoint of a rationalization of just them making better choices, and it's not going to be that easy for them even after the illumination. And it's going to be a great encouragement, though, to all of a sudden realize that God is there for them in a way they've never experienced before, and that they don't have to carry that weight on their shoulders anymore, on their back anymore, that he understands how bad it was for them. And now he's willing and ready to make it work for them, that the fruits of the illumination will be for them, not just in word, but in deed.
Yes, and again, going to this idea that the people are going to be given what they need. Um, and I noticed that people that are new and they're coming into the faith, they need an awful lot of instruction. And I think at the illumination of conscience, that's where the church, those who know, are going to be called upon to be catechists and teachers in order to bring people. Just because they receive an illumination doesn't mean they'll know everything, right? Some might, because God could give that grace, but it's really an opportunity to evangelize and to, I do this a lot, with these people that come for exorcism, and you have to kind of teach them, well, this and such a prayer, and if you do this, you'll get these results. And a lot of people, they don't know their catechism, their the Ten Commandments well, so you have to give them instruction. So it'll be a great time of evangelization, to get people to understand the fullness of faith.
Yes, yes, absolutely.
Beautiful. So let's continue. The illumination will be a true awakening, a renewal. It will place mankind back on course and will, for the first time, give mankind a true understanding of its heavenly Father. For too long, we have often known him as an old man. He is far from such a concept. He is life, strong and vital, and the illumination will reveal this to the world.
Yeah, I think we've already touched on a lot of this, but I would add at this point, you had mentioned before the revelations to Mother Eugenia Ravasio that occurred in the 1930s. So when she experienced two, what she called apparitions of the Father. Even the theologians that investigated her had trouble understanding this. And so we won't really try to provide an answer here because I don't think we have an answer. But one of the things that is present in the two revelations she received was that the Father acknowledged that the world has this stubborn, chronic image of him as a grumpy old man or a stern old man, or someone who's there to dish out punishment, and we need to hide from. And the illumination is going to allow us to see the Father in a conceptualization way that will erase that will change that we won't no longer view him as this man with the gray hair and the gray beard. In fact, one of the amazing things about the revelations to Mother Eugenia was that the image that she had, which unfortunately was transformed by the painting that was done of what she described as what she saw, in which they put a beard on his face. And then over time, some people actually, made that gray again. What the Father was trying to convey to her is that he wants to destroy that whole concept of him. He no longer wants to be viewed as this stern grandfather type figure that's just looking to unleash justice. He wants us to know that nothing could be further from the truth.
Well said, well said. And he doesn't have like white hair like me, because he's a spirit, right? He's the Trinity, Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. So he doesn't have a body like ours. So that imagery that we often put on art is really a false depiction of God, right? And the eternal Father. So that's a very good point.
Saying to Mother Eugenia that he's very aware of that, and he's saying that he's very aware that the imagery has led to the concepts of him. So he wants to not only erase the imagery, but then, because he understands that those concepts will then fall by the wayside.
Yes, and there's nothing wrong with white hair and white beard, but as you know, but it does gives you. It is what God made you, and of course, as you age, I did have a black beard and dark hair at one time, but but the God is always eternal youth, right? It's
Yes.
he's the Alpha and the Omega, right?
Yeah.
So
Exactly.
let's we'll finish with this one because then we'll be at 10,
Okay.
and then we'll continue at another episode. The illumination will reveal the effects of the choices generations of people have made through disordered passion, a long sojourn outside of God's will. Indeed, the effects of sin have mutated the destiny of many. Thus, the illumination of conscience will wed heaven and earth, bypassing the generations of damage, the hurdles Satan created in man's journey home.
Wow. So think how profound that is. So the illumination is not only going to, awaken us to uh, the present state of our soul, the sinfulness of the world, the sinfulness of the choices we make on a day-to-day basis, but it's going to go beyond that. It's going to erase what you and I have heard referred to as generational sin, and the effects of generational sin and the consequences are something we could probably spend a whole show on. And we can look at it from a standpoint of individuals, which is the easiest way, but let's look at it from a standpoint of a broader sense for a moment. The generations of the sins that affect nations. Okay, so let's look at the poor souls in China right now, or what occurred with the Soviet Union and communism in Eastern Europe. Those people, beginning in the 1920s, all the way up to late 1980s, 1990s in the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe, became victims of a generational oppression that affected their lives in a way that was not just on an individual basis, but on a communal basis. And then like I said, we certainly can still see that with communism as it exists today in China, in North Korea, in Cuba, in Vietnam. We can see that those sins are still at play. And so when we take that and we apply it across the board, it's there throughout society and throughout every culture. Probably the most stark and deserving look at that is the subject of abortion. We have young women today in this world that are what they would describe themselves as pro-choice. They couldn't even, some of them, begin to understand the opposite of not being pro-choice. To them, they have been raised since childhood by parents that were pro-choice, and to them, it's just a matter of a logical decision that a woman should have control over the decisions of her body, and it's black and white as can be. It's cut and dry. And this effect of the illumination is going to erase that generational misunderstanding, that generational sin that's been passed on. And like I said, we could probably sit here and go through example after example after example of those evils that are encrusted into our civilization, encrusted into our cultures, that are going to be smashed, crushed, evaporated, melted. They're all going to be taken down. We're going to start fresh as a human race on this planet.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of purification that needs to happen in all of this, and that's why we ask God for mercy, because there is the chastisement is also predicted, and we are responsible for our actions. But like you say, most people really don't know it's generational sins, and that they've been raised a certain way. I know I was born in Canada, and Canada. I mean, the majority of the people think it's a right to abortion, and how dare you, try to take away that right? It's pretty pathetic when you have once Catholic nation, like Quebec, for instance, which 85% of the people were Catholic. To think like that, it's inconceivable. And so that the illumination of conscience, we call on God to give us this gift, this great event that Our Lady has predicted. And this Our Lady of Good Success, again, it's Our Lady of Good Success was not well known until maybe 10 years ago. And I had the opportunity to go there when it was not known. In 2004, many of the revelations were discovered after 2004. So the revelations that pertain to the times that we're living in. But again, to me, I just look at that and say, she's talking about the warning. What we understand as a warning, she's the mother. She's Our Lady of this great event that is to come, which will transform the world. So we're looking forward to Our Lady to intercede for us, and keep praying your rosary. Keep close to the sacraments, and be evangelizers around you. Share these videos, podcasts with others, so that they could experience God's love, because it's really God's love that we're bringing His light. We're bringing the light of Our Lady's love for humanity. So I want to thank you, Dr. Thomas. It's been a great pleasure. It's you have a wealth of knowledge, but you have a lot of wisdom. You've been at this for 35 years now, and you've known the best of the best, like Father René Laurentin, and many others that have passed, and you're continuing to spread the torch.
Yes, well, great, Yves. I look forward to the next one.
All right. Well, God bless you, and God bless all for listening, and till next time.